100,000 years ago, a caveman was out hunting on the frozen wastes when he slipped and fell into a crevasse. In 1988, he was discovered by some scientists and thawed out. He then went to law school and became unfrozen caveman lawyer.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm just a caveman. I fell in some ice and later got thawed out by some of your scientists. Your world frightens and confuses me. Sometimes the honking horns of your traffic make me want to get out of my BMW and run off into the hills or whatever. Sometimes when I get a message on my fax machine, I wonder, did little demons get inside and type it? I don't know. My primitive mind can't grasp these concepts.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the NEETwork, the podcast for all things NEET. I am Theo, and with me, as always, is my friend Dexter.
Hello, everybody.
And let's just get right into the NEET current events. What I understand is that the special unemployment benefits that a lot of people are getting due to COVID either have ended recently or they will be ending soon. What do you know about that, Dexter? If you know anything.
I know that the moratorium is slated to end soon, if not already. Other than that, I kind of just figured the NEET books were going to run dry eventually. Government can't support us forever.
The moratorium on rent is ending soon, as is basically everything for COVID. But what's going on is COVID is still a problem, according to the media. It seems like every other week there's some new variant that's going to exterminate all of humanity, and I don't understand why they're ending the benefits now if COVID is still a problem. Or maybe they'll bring the benefits back, I don't know.
Quick, someone get the schizos. We need a conspiracy theory.
Absolutely. I kind of ran into this a little while ago. I'm not on unemployment, I work a job, but I was collecting food stamps for about 3 months while I was between jobs, and what happened was when I signed up, they gave me the full benefit, or it was around $230, which actually is, for one guy, it actually is quite a bit of food if you spend it right. But then, maybe 3 or 4 months later, I find that the deposit in my food stamp account is only $30, and I call them up, I'm like, well, why is that? And what they didn't tell me was that I was receiving a special COVID benefit that was raised to the maximum, but because I had gotten a job, I was kicked back down to $30, which might feed me for a week if I spent it exactly right.
I don't know. $30 can buy you a lot of ramen.
Yes, delicious ramen.
But it's still not chicken nuggies.
No, not chicken nuggies for a week. Well, you know what? I'd have to think about it, or I'd have to go look at the price of chicken nuggies, but you could buy a week's worth of chicken nuggies with $30. What I was going to say, though, was that there's that one lady who wrote the ramen cookbook, where like all of the recipes use ramen as a primary ingredient in some way.
I know my brother made like some kind of ramen and spam kind of survival meal in it. It was pretty decent. It's kind of like fried spam and ramen.
I remember a very long time ago, I watched a video about, it was this guy talking about his experience in prison and like a ramen recipe he made that was like ramen noodles, a couple of condiments, and one of them was like mustard and tuna. And I actually made it, and I'm not going to lie, it was pretty good. This prison ramen recipe.
Gotta do what you can to survive. Next, you're going to try prison wine, right?
No, I don't think I'll make prison wine or prison acid.
Come on, man. It's only has like a 35% chance to kill you.
Right. But we it related back to this. Is it really that no one wants to work? We shall see what the normies do once their unemployment benefits dry up.
Yeah, I'm curious if it's a workers' revolution or just a convenient time.
Part of me really wants it to be a workers' revolution. And like the best way we can revolt is by not doing anything at all. Like, what are they going to do? Drag us to work and force us to?
Well, I don't think that's really all that possible.
I mean, I'm sure they'd like to, but they probably won't.
Speaking of dragging people into things,
Right?
if you guys like the show, you can help the NEETwork grow. For those of you who are listening to the Podbean or any of the podcast websites the NEETwork is hosted on, leave a like and consider downloading the episode. If you're listening on YouTube, it only takes a moment of your time to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. The engagement helps a lot, guys, and it does more than you think.
Yes, absolutely. We are very much enjoying the engagement we're getting with the videos, seeing the comments. I know when I come home from work and I see that our videos have comments on them, it really does kind of like, it takes the load off of getting home from a long work day.
It's kind of like, oh, hey, people are actually kind of interested. So that's refreshing.
Yeah. So with all that out of the way, let's get right into the subject of the evening. And tonight, we are discussing the history of NEETs, starting at, well, what I think is the beginning with the original NEETs, which coincides with the subject of the original human beings.
Are you suggesting that Neanderthals were the first outdoor NEETs?
I'm not. Let's see. Neanderthals aren't technically human, so I'm not sure. Let's say yes.
We need to get Cleve in here.
We need to get who in here?
Cleve in here.
Who's Cleve?
You don't know Cleve?
No.
He's the guy who made Stones of Arnhem.
Oh, that guy. Yeah, the I am a certified living fossil. I even have a note from the doctor.
Let's get that guy in here.
That guy's hilarious. But at the risk of making an appeal to nature fallacy, one could argue that NEETdom is the human or the natural state of humankind. When you think about early man, it's kind of easy to think of them as NEETs because the institutions that create normies, such as unemployment, education, and training, simply didn't exist back then.
Arguably speaking, the concept of NEET didn't really mean anything either. I mean, if we think about it, without the kind of framework to kind of create the NEET doesn't exist. It's just a normal person.
That's true, and I guess what you could say that like a standard caveman who isn't employed is just their era's version of the normie, but that's not the argument I'm trying to make. At least compared to us. Compared to the modern day cavemen and other prehistorical societies were NEETs.
They lived a modern NEET lifestyle.
Right. Supporting this idea is the theory of the original affluent society, which was put forward by a guy named Marshall, I think it's pronounced Solins, in the 1966 book entitled Man the Hunter. And this theory states that hunter-gatherers from humanity's ancient past worked far fewer hours and had much more free time than the average human today, which sounds pretty good.
I kind of want to debate that a little bit. I think, yeah, like 40 hours are kind of taken out of our week, but I also want to think that, you know, the survival requirements back in the day took up more than 40 hours.
For argument's sake, we don't truly know just how much ancient men were working.
I personally think that surviving in the wild takes way more time than a 40-hour work week. But at the same time, it's probably more gratifying because it's like nothing but net benefit to yourself.
Yes, surviving in the wilderness is quite difficult. And a lot of the reasons for this like theorized affluence is simply because ancient people didn't need very much. Not that it was necessarily easy to live out in the wilderness. True, we don't really know how many hours a week a Paleolithic person might have quote unquote worked, Solons theorizes about 24 as opposed to the 40 hours or more that a normie supposedly works, but I think I'll take that 24 over the 40 personally. And like you said, everything that you work is a net gain. It's not like some other caveman is getting more rocks than you, even if you were the one hunting the mammoth.
I want to think. I want to know where the numbers came from, how he kind of came to that conclusion.
I didn't exactly read this Man the Hunter book, but I'm sure he outlines it in there. His general reasons are that ancient peoples didn't need very much. These were often pretty small societies that needed much smaller volumes of food to sustain them. And when you couple that fact with the idea that most of the time these people were nomadic and so didn't need to keep very many possessions, anything they left behind when the tribe moved on could probably be found in nature.
Yeah, I guess I can actually see that. I can kind of agree on that point. Lacking modern luxury, they have no reason to like put down anchors and slow down, so to speak.
Right, there's no keeping up with the Joneses, as it were, in Paleolithic society. And as far as we know about education of ancient man, in these times it was very practical. School in Paleolithic times consisted probably of learning the skills essential for survival.
I mean, it makes sense. The school was probably just a bunch of practical skills. One grug showing the other grug what berries are safe to eat.
Or how to weave baskets, or knap flint, and I'm not sure anyone really knows this, although I'm sure someone might be able to answer it, is like, were there people who were professional flint knappers, or people who were professional bone carvers, or people who were really good at tanning?
I did learn something kind of interesting recently. And this is really kind of off topic, but it's about flint kind of piercing.
All right.
Flint shaping.
Uh-huh.
You can't do it when the flint is dry, because the air causes it to fracture differently. But if you keep it underwater, you have a lot more control over how it so you can shape it a lot better.
I would bet that ancient man would know that.
Oh, I'm certain if you gave it enough time, they'd probably figure it out. You know, it's how humanity works.
Yeah, and what I'm wondering is was there a guy in these caveman tribes who was the dedicated flint napper and stuff like that? That doesn't seem quite right to me. It seems like, I guess maybe it is a little bit like nowadays where everyone knows a certain kind of skill, and then there are specialists who say, do the hide tanning, or when the mammoth is down, they butcher the mammoth apart, stuff like that. That's kind of what I would think happens.
What I would assume is something more along the lines of like, it's kind of it takes a village approach. Uh, if something's lagging behind, everyone puts in a hand, because I mean the tribe's survival depends on it.
Right. On everyone working together, pretty much.
Of course, you probably have some that were more dedicated to one task than another because they're more capable. But
Right. I can't imagine that there weren't specialists. But at the same time, these skills are simple enough that you could at least teach everyone. It's not something where we're like, it's not like auto mechanics where it's such a complicated thing that you need to be trained to learn how to do it. But like what you're saying is, this idea of everyone working together, as well as having much more leisure time than the average human today, is where many anthropologists believe humanity evolved things like culture and language and music.
I could see it. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of that culture and art has been kind of lost over the time. Slowly rediscovering it, but we don't really know a lot.
It does seem like in the modern day we are kind of sliding away from art, and it seems like even like just off the top of my head, cinema. We don't really have cinema anymore. It's just I guess you could call it artistic junk food made for the masses. Does that make sense?
I kind of disagree. With the times, cultures evolve, and with that, so does the art that comes along with it.
I suppose.
Cinema is kind of a relic of the past when streaming started to become more of a real-time thing, cinema died, effectively.
I don't think so. I think streaming didn't kill cinema because going to the theaters is an experience. What I'm arguing is that, like, say they make a Marvel movie every single year, not because there's someone who's passionate about making the Marvel movie, but because they know Marvel movies will make boatloads of money in China. That's more what I'm talking about.
You could say that, but people have paid for art over the years, right?
Yeah.
Even the greatest pieces ever made back in, the medieval times,
Hmm.
they were paid for. They were commissioned.
That's true. That's true. I hadn't thought of that.
Um, I guess really the big question is, did video kill the radio star?
Well, yes, but the video killed the radio star for reasons different than, like, artistic integrity. Anyway, back to cavemen. One might argue that life as a caveman isn't necessarily comfortable. We were kind of talking about that, how survival in the wilderness is very difficult, and while we think of Paleolithic man, we're thinking of, like, cold caves and dealing with saber-toothed tigers, and that's not exactly an ideal, comfy, neat life. For many, this is evidenced by the fact that life expectancy of ancient people was actually very low. And first of all, there's very little evidence to suggest that cavemen actually lived in caves.
Humans were known for traveling a lot. I'd imagine that they just kind of found whatever was reasonable shelter and set up there. They probably carried around some kind of shelter as well.
Right, humans are quite well known for building structures, and when evidence of human visitation is found in caves, it's more often to serve a religious purpose.
Though, to be fair, the concept of the neat cave lived on.
Yes, the cozy, neat cave. It occurs to me that I need to get working on mine. Our Discord doesn't have any neat nest pictures yet, and I feel ashamed that I haven't posted mine, but it's not up to my standards just yet.
My goblin cave has yet to
Take shape.
become cozy.
Right.
Maybe when I get my own place, I'll kind of build it how I want it.
Yeah. And as far as saber-toothed tigers goes, I'm not sure the threat of predation was that common, and I would think if it was, humanity would have evolved very differently. Although there is certainly evidence of prehistoric animals preying on humans. I just don't think it was as common as we tend to say it is.
I just imagine that, when you encounter a pack of saber-toothed cats, or like what is that one bird that like hunted people down?
Uh, I want to say there was the big moa bird.
Terror birds.
Yeah, terror birds.
Yeah, I'd imagine when they encountered those, maybe a couple got out and were able to record it and didn't really live long after that.
Sure, but, like, even nowadays, like, the phenomenon of lions hunting humans was really, really rare. Like, it was probably more common back then, but I can't imagine it was that common.
I'd imagine it's a lot more common back then, considering the lack of shelter.
Like, more common, but even, let's say, maybe you've heard the story of the man-eating lions of Tsavo. That was only 2 guys, or 2 lions, rather, and those people were intense. It wasn't like a whole pride of lions preying on this camp of humans. It was only 2.
I don't think I've ever actually heard this story.
It's fascinating. I'll send you a link after I'm done, or after we're done recording the podcast.
All right, yeah, sounds interesting.
And as for low life expectancy of humans, this likely has to do with a lack of understanding of medical care than any kind of predation. And despite what some people think, there's plenty of evidence to suggest that Paleolithic people took care of the sick and disabled to the best of their ability. And they didn't just throw the infirm out like the Spartans were reputed to.
I know that they had very not great medical treatments that sometimes did work. I think one was called like skull trepidation.
Yeah, they did practice trepidation.
Skull trepanation
Trepanation, that's right.
to like cure things like headaches or brain pressure.
Right. Even back then.
Yeah, there's evidence that that did happen back then, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
For my point, there's at least one skeleton that's been recovered of a woman who had some kind of palsy and was unable to walk, but her most pressing medical concern was basically tooth decay because they kind of basically gave her lots of sugary treats in the form of dates.
Yeah, I seem to remember something, reading something like this. Uh, they tended to, yeah, carry their elderly and their weak with them, and there's a lot of evidence suggesting that their elderly and weak were actually pretty well taken care of, because there's unfeasible skeletons, things that shouldn't be able to have gotten to adulthood, that were clearly grown to adulthood. Things with like major arthritis and like bone fusing, stuff like that.
Or even just like wounding.
Yeah, and they still made it to adulthood, and it's kind of interesting that it's really more of a big traveling family unit.
Right. And I think because of, at least in due in part to that, this working together as a family unit, as well as quite a few other factors, caused humanity to prove a successful species. Populations grow to a point that hunter-gatherer lifestyle becomes unsustainable. And I remember we talked a little bit about this in a past episode, that not everyone can live that kind of homestead lifestyle simply because nature alone doesn't provide enough for every human out there.
Yeah, the if every person went and filled their freezer with deer meat, there wouldn't be any deer left.
How many humans? It's like 7 billion, isn't it?
Yeah,
All over Earth. Yeah, we 7 billion humans can't hunt 7 billion deer. That simply would not work. And for that reason, humans had to adapt. To do that, we created technologies like agriculture, along with the idea of permanent structures and settlements.
I think that those were kind of a side effect of the agricultural development. I mean, you can't really pick up a farm and go, at least not back then.
Yeah, not with their technology.
I would reason that they probably would have preferred to travel with the seasons if they could have, just to escape like the winters. But
I think the really early, at least depending on where you were, the really early agricultural societies did do that, where they would migrate a lot like birds. They would stay in a particularly fertile area during the harvest season, and then in winter they might go somewhere warmer where hunting and fishing was more viable.
I kind of curious what your thoughts on this, because I kind of sit to the point where, to a degree, the society we have now was actually kind of a necessity, and it's a good thing that we developed towards it. It's unfortunate that it's become borderline exploitative, but
Yeah, I think you're right.
the normie lifestyle came out of necessity, not out of choice. There's really no getting around it.
Right, and that does kind of beg the question, maybe, if normies are an adaptation away from the Paleolithic NEET, does that mean normies are in some way superior to NEETs in an evolutionary sense?
Societally speaking, I kind of I have to say yes. They kind of adapted to the times a little more effectively.
Adapted to growing human population a little more effectively.
Yeah, and society's growth was kind of unavoidable. Like I was like what I was saying earlier. How at a certain point your species can't thrive unless you make some sacrifices.
And I guess the only real argument I have to counter that is that evolution doesn't necessarily mean improvement every single time.
Yeah, progress isn't necessarily good progress.
Right. Evolution doesn't create better organisms so much as it creates adapted organisms. And furthermore, if wage slavery makes us miserable, is it really a superior adaptation?
I'd even argue that society has halted evolution in a sense. By kind of cutting out those natural stressors and replacing them with new ways to remediate. We've effectively stunted our evolutionary capabilities as a species. Granted, I mean, we've kind of shifted to a technological evolution.
Right, but we're not really evolving any other way. It's just the tech becomes better, but I would say spiritually our society is a void.
I can't disagree with you there, but I gotta say, I really can't wait until I get my cybernetic augments.
Same. My cybernetic augments and my sex robot. I think I'll take those.
Your cyber waifu.
My cyber waifu, absolutely. But with the evolution of society comes things like money and debt and all the concepts that come along with it. Now, these don't appear for quite some time, but there are records of banking taking place in the Middle East from ancient times.
The concept of currency is present even with like modern day monkeys, where they'll exchange fruits for sexual favors.
Right, specifically sex. It's always sex.
Ape together strong.
Right? Let's see, what was I going to say? There was economy back even in like Paleolithic times. They traded essentially obsidian as currency, at least here on the West Coast. And there's obsidian found in like Oregon that for some reason they know, I guess maybe after chemical analysis, they know it's from Oregon, but it's made its way all the way down into like Mexico and South America.
No, that's kind of interesting.
They know it originated up in the North American areas.
I never actually knew that. That's kind of an interesting fact. I wonder, is it because they carried it around as like a knife, or has it been proven that it was a currency?
Maybe not currency in the way that we think of it, but like they might have brought it as a kind of basic trade unit. So like, hey, we'll give you this obsidian for your, let's see, what did Mesoamericans make a lot of? I was going to say human sacrifices, probably corn or peppers or something like that.
Kind of just exchanged edible goods, spices. Spices have always been popular.
Something like that probably was how it worked. And given that back then there were few laws to exploit laborers from exploitation, I think we can safely extrapolate that things like wage slaves, as well as regular slaves, were extant in ancient times. And all of these factors come together to create the first normies. That is the end of the kind of history discussion.
Your first normies were slaving away for a couple of rocks.
For some rocks, some bread.
The time really hasn't changed.
Right? Invest in the rock market. Well, who's that one guy that's like, okay, dump it? Who is that?
Dump it, Bogdanov.
Rokdanov?
Rokdanov.
Okay, dump it.
Rock stock hit the rock bottom. So I guess since we've discussed the historical kind of birthplace of the NEET, so to speak, how does this connect up to the modern day NEET? What does this have to do with the modern kind of envision?
It's an interesting kind of phenomenon I'm seeing that maybe a long time ago, people looked into the future and kind of like, oh, the future will be better, and we speculate all of these advancing technologies will free us from work. But now what I'm seeing is most people don't see a lot of hope in the future, and the best case we get is a cyberpunk dystopia, but without the badass cybernetics and sex robots. So it makes sense that recently we've seen trends of people adopting a lifestyle reminiscent to something you would find in the past. And one of the best examples, at least among normies, is what's called cottagecore. And another example I've noticed is the homesteader movement.
Okay, I'm not going to lie. I'm definitely guilty of being a part of this movement.
Yeah.
I know for a little while you and I, too, were talking about the idea of seasteading.
Yeah, I was maybe listeners will know that I kind of romanticize the pirate life despite historical realities, and I guess you could call that a form of cottagecore, pirate core maybe. And we were talking a little bit about breaking away and creating our own sea-society somewhere.
Then that proved to be a little bit dangerous when I think some guy tried to seastead in like Singapore, and he drifted into their international waters and got put in prison for it.
No, it was Thailand.
Oh, Thailand.
Yeah, he didn't get arrested, but he did flee arrest. He escaped them and is now in Panama, who is letting him do the seastead thing.
Oh, at least he's still following his dreams.
Yeah, exactly. I would say for most, maybe fully adopting a caveman lifestyle is not the best idea. You don't want to into the wild yourself like that one guy. Perhaps adopting some life habits of our ancient ancestors can be beneficial.
While maintaining modern hygiene habits, of course.
Yes, absolutely. Don't be a dirty, gross caveman. Be a
Don't be a smelly caveman. Be a shiny, clean caveman.
right with like rippling abs.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah. And I think these practices can make your life easier and cheaper, and even just kind of fulfill your life as a hobby.
Yeah, I know there's that one YouTuber. All he does is he goes out and he like builds crap all day. He like builds mud huts.
Yeah, there's like a whole weird subgenre of YouTubers where the genre is like not silent per se, but it's just the sounds of them working and like making primitive things. And there's a handful of channels like that, and a lot of people are commenting like, "Wow, this is really relaxing to watch," and it's triggering something in our lizard brain that we like.
There's something very therapeutic. It's kind of healthy for the psyche to kind of do something like that, you know?
Right. Just the practice of survival skills, I think, is therapeutic to humans. Things like building shelters or tying knots. And we also talked about the mental health benefits of getting outside and into nature.
I mean, I definitely am guilty of like getting that itch to want to build something.
Oh yeah. I'm guilty of like having a really strong urge to just go in a woods and be in shelter, but I'm equally as guilty of like, this room's really comfy. I think I'll just stay here for the weekend and play Mech Warrior.
Ape strong. Ape make fish basket.
Yes. And also, these hobbies provide a lot of exercise to the surprise of absolutely no one.
Who would have thought the manual way of doing everything required a lot more movement?
Right? That you would burn calories hauling sticks and logs over rough terrain.
You bend the terrain to your will. That's what you do. I mean, I don't think it even stops at just like the exercise you get. I think that there's also kind of a diet aspect to it. The old fashioned.
A lot of those YouTube channels we mentioned before. There's that one guy who goes out with no food and lives solely off of what he can find. And that is what is called the Paleolithic diet. He's following it kind of out of necessity, but you can choose to follow the Paleolithic diet.
I think I know what guy you're talking about, and he is absolutely ripped.
Oh God, he is a. I mean, I think his name is literally Chad.
I don't think it's just the lifting sticks.
Yeah, he's got an amazing diet, and that Paleolithic diet I'm mentioning is mimicking the diet available to pre-agricultural humans. I know we talked about it before, and what that means is lots of veggies, meats, fruits, good fats, and eggs.
I mean, that's basically like my diet at work. I like to think I'm a little healthier than most of the people around me. And it is, generally speaking, a little cheaper, except for the fruits and meats.
Would you say a lot of your coworkers are maybe not obese, but like fat?
Yeah, they're overweight.
Okay, yeah, overweight. That's the PC word for it, right?
I don't think there is a PC word for it, but
overweight. That's about as clinical as I can think of. Another really important thing to avoid is refined sugar in the Paleolithic diet.
Well, yeah, any kind of processed good like that.
Right. No soda, no candy. I think for a lot of people, just dropping soda would cut a lot of their weight gain right out of their life. But soda's just so delicious.
I know I talked about this back when we did our NEET health episode, but
Mhm.
when I was in swimming, I cut out high fructose corn syrup. If it was in literally anything, I would just not consume it.
Really? How hard was that to achieve? 'Cause high fructose corn syrup is in freaking everything.
It is in everything. It is so difficult to find something that doesn't have it. It's like a binding agent almost, and it's a real struggle. I had to eat a lot of basic things for a couple years.
You'd have to like raw vegetables off the shelf.
Like veggies that we grew in our backyard, and
Yeah.
like rice, eggs, um, I and water.
Yeah. And you pretty much just described the Paleolithic diet with the exception of maybe rice. As far as like the health benefits, the paleo diet is believed to aid in digestive health and lean muscle development, but also increased satiety and weight loss.
I can see that. Those are pretty lean foods that you have there. The benefits you're getting from them.
Right. And did you find that your kind of unintentional paleo diet led to some of those things?
I wasn't sure if it was the swimming or the diet, but I definitely had leaner muscle.
Mm. And I'd say, in my experience, when I was intentionally following the paleo diet, I basically found these to be true. I also helped it found with my wallet because I wasn't buying things like milk and bread and soda. It cut a good percentage out of my grocery bill, and that could usually go back in my pocket, or I would buy meats or something with it.
I mean, I know when I was in college, you saw there'd be like a month where I pretty much ate nothing but like eggs
Yeah,
because they were cheap and they were plentiful and they're filling.
yeah, exactly. And like if you're really trying to pinch pennies for something, you theoretically could cut meats out and just eat eggs, and you would probably be fine.
Yeah, I would think that you need a little bit more variety than that, but if you're going kind of short-ish term, eggs can definitely be a good staple. I mean, they're considered a staple for a reason.
Exactly.
Eggs, rice. There's a couple of good staples out there.
Um, is there anything you'd like to add to this section, perhaps? Anything you can think of?
I think couple of things that you kind of want to practice, maybe to get back to your ancestral roots. Going outside, learning how to build things, maybe learn how to cook over an open fire. You know, go camping a little bit. I know I did it a lot as a kid, and it was pretty enriching. That's just kind of healthy for the psyche to jump back to the ancestral roots.
Right. Personally, I'm trying to put together a camp kit of or basically all natural materials. I have a couple metal knives, but like I'm avoiding things like nylon and plastics pretty much wherever I can. I'm in the process of putting together like a bedroll that does not have like a plastic sleeping bag. It has it's got a thick wool blanket and a deer skin, and that's my current bedroll.
I've been thinking I want to go camping recently, though I don't want to go as far as you. I kind of want to go out and do something. Speaking of close to nature, I know it's not related to. I know it's not related to the episode too much, and it's not really related to NEETs either. But it is kind of nature related, and it's a big event. Probably won't be that big of news by the time the episode comes out. But La Palma finally erupted.
La Palma. Yeah, that could be interesting.
I hear it could cause a giant tsunami on the East Coast. So if there's a tsunami on the East Coast, sorry to hear that, guys.
Yeah, if, I don't know what's gonna happen.
I hope y'all are safe.
It should be interesting. Yeah, stay safe. I mean, it's easy to say something is going to be interesting when you're on the other side of the country watching it happen. Absolutely stay safe. If they tell you to leave, just leave. Don't wait around. Yeah, if it looks bad, probably leave before they give you the signal to leave, because then you'll just get stuck.
Though I think it is kind of over with now. It erupted. So,
Okay, it did its thing.
yeah, it kind of blew its load, so to speak.
Oh, okay. But I think if that's all we have, I'd like to thank everyone for listening all the way through to the end. If you like what you heard, you can help us grow in a few ways. We're still a pretty small community and always trying to grow our audience. So if you have friends who might be interested in the NEETwork, let them know about us. Any boost to our signal helps, and we treasure every new subscriber. If you'd like to support us in a more personal way, consider contributing to our Patreon at patreon.com/NEETworkPod. Your kind contribution goes toward paying for guest appearances, paid promotion, membership to various podcasting services, and with what's left over, we might just buy ourselves some chicky tendies.
We would like to build a supportive community of fellow NEETs and NEET hopefuls, so take a look at the NEET Discord, where all things NEET are discussed. We plan on hosting special Discord events, such as watching parties and shouting out distinguished Discord users, in the future. The links to all of these and more are in the description below. Good night, everybody, and stay comfy, Theo.
Stay comfy, Dexter.